We'll keep on bagging her.
Yep.
CPR.
No place has suffered from the heroin opiate epidemic more than Ohio. 5 years ago, you could sense the crisis exploding when we spoke with people such as Randy Carr.
I relapsed while I was pregnant with her, and I used until 3 weeks ago.
Our state has the highest addiction rates in the nation, and it takes its toll on the addicts who often die and on the first responders trying to save them.
Busy, and you see a lot of the stuff that happens. And sorry, I'm a little.
It's okay.
It's tough to fight some of the same battles over and over again.
But finally, maybe a little light, a little hope, starting at the VA in Cleveland. As doctors here have gained experience with opiates, they have learned a lot about how to try and deal with the pain their patients experience without resorting to opiates as often.
We're talking about rehabilitation, physical rehabilitation, water-based rehabilitation. We're talking about even medication which are not opioids.
In some complex cases, they're even talking about performing certain surgeries to deal with pain.
All of these things allow us to steer away from opioids in the majority of the time.
And that has now put a national spotlight on the Cleveland VA. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and members of his White House opioid task force came to see firsthand. After all, in a state with the highest addiction rates, the Cleveland VA has the lowest addiction rates among any VA in the nation.
The model here is extraordinary, both in terms of its breadth and its effectiveness.
In its own way, the VA in Cleveland has put together the pieces of a puzzle in an 8-step program it calls Stop Pain. It involves a change in medical culture. From the start, they try and treat pain with few, if any, opiates. And the program also incorporates different ideas that we've seen used in different places in Cleveland for years.
I think the docs have a big responsibility in this.
Just about 5 years ago, University Hospitals saw the need to put guidelines in place to try and limit opiate prescribing as the epidemic was beginning to explode.
We want patients' pain to be well controlled. We don't want our patients out there suffering pain. On the other hand, we don't want to get them hooked, if you will. So that's why we think our guidelines are at least a starting point.
In addition, the Cleveland Clinic's rehab hospital has used a mix of physical therapy coupled with counseling and non-opiate drugs, often to great success, with patients such as Alex Ford. A few years back, we spoke to his mom, Gail Bernstein.
I don't use the word miracle very often, as I've said to Dr. Benez, but for us this feels like a miracle.
And Cuyahoga County Drug Court Judge David Mattia has insisted addiction, often caused by legal prescriptions, needs to be treated like the disease that it is.
Destigmatize it. If you become dependent upon something, we shouldn't treat you as a leper.
What Mattia has been saying for years sounds a lot like what a senior advisor to President Trump, Kellyanne Conway, said last week after touring the Cleveland VA with Governor Christie's team.
One of my personal goals in working with the president on this particular issue is to help destigmatize opioid addiction, because people need to feel free to come forward and admit that they have a problem.
Another member of Christie's White House panel also toured the Cleveland VA, former Congressman Patrick Kennedy.
I'm privileged to be in recovery.
Kennedy says the nation also must treat addiction and have it covered by insurance as it does other diseases.
This is a relapsing chronic illness. We want continuity of care. We want the same reimbursement. We want the same urgency of care that you would provide for any other disease that someone could be afflicted with. End of story.
Is everything still reading on there, on the monitor?
The story is sadly far from over.
Families across this country are desperate, and you all provide the very real possibility of the most powerful drug of all, and that's hope.
Hope that fewer will die and even fewer will become addicted as the medical community changes how it deals with pain, based in part on what's been learned here in Cleveland.